Hey guys, it's Madison and welcome to this video. It is the beginning of the year, which means it's time for the annual tradition of setting my yearly goals for the year 2025. Just like last year, before I jump into my actual goals for the year, I am going to briefly kind of overview my 3 languages and my lifelong goals for them, because I think that sets an important context for my yearly goals. Starting off with Korean, which is my strongest language in terms of skill level and in terms of motivation. I got topic level 6 twice now. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I've had that level of topic if you care about test scores, and I currently live in Korea, have for a few years, and plan to continue to do so in the future. And so this is definitely the language that is the strongest personal connection to me. I feel like deeply connected to it as kind of a part of me, whereas the others don't feel as much kind of so personally connected to me, I guess I could say. If I had kind of a one true love as far as language learning is concerned, Korean is definitely it. It is by far my favorite language, I guess you could say, and the one that I really want to be as close to a native like as possible, as quickly as I can, and to maintain that for the rest of my life. Like I already mentioned, I am fluent in Korean, but I'm not nearly native level yet. So I am constantly improving or working on improving my skills to become closer and closer to that possibly unattainable goal of being native speaker level in Korean, since it is the nearest and dearest to my heart. Next in line in terms of skill level is Mandarin Chinese, followed by a very weak Japanese, definitely way down compared to the other two. Mandarin, I'd say I'm like, I don't know, mid-intermediate-ish. I don't really know how to rank myself. I've never taken an HSK test, or I think not in like 13 or 14 years, so nothing at all recent. And then Japanese is just, it's not really much of anything right now, especially because like the second half of this past year, I didn't do almost anything in Japanese. And so my already weak skills to begin with just kind of faded away into nothingness. So it's at kind of a very low spot right now. And that also kind of is how it is in terms of motivation as well. I have the second highest motivation to study Mandarin Chinese, at least recently, and falling in a distant third is Japanese. I think it's because of the shows I watch. I tend to watch a lot of shows in Mandarin and Korean, and I struggle to find content that I enjoy in Japanese, and thus follows the motivation. I don't really encounter it in my media, and therefore I'm not really strongly motivated to study it actively either, or read or all those things in Japanese either, which is why it is so far in third. Both Mandarin and Japanese are definitely not like true soul connection languages like Korean is, and because of that, I don't really ever expect to reach fluency in either one of those languages. I never really speak or write in either one of those languages. I don't really care to very much either, although you'll say there is one goal this year that is kind of in the face of that, but generally speaking, I'm not expecting to and don't really care to reach native speaker level of fluency in either one of those languages. It's just kind of a fun thing that I enjoy doing sometimes. If I were to happen to somehow attain fluency, I would of course not turn it down, but again, not really in my expectations for the future. I'm just slowly chipping away at improving those languages, hopefully, year by year. So yeah, that is the overall kind of overview of my 3 languages and my skill levels and overall passions and motivations for them. Moving on to kind of my overall theme for the year. Part of it I'm going to copy and paste from last year because I really enjoyed it, and that is focusing on short-term language projects or challenges. And then adding to that, I want to also kind of set goals or themes for individual months this year, for each month of the year. I'm not much of a goal setter usually, which is funny to say in an annual goal setting video, but like in terms of like month to month, I don't usually set goals for what to accomplish. I set like a vision at the beginning of the year, then at the end of the year I reflect without really paying too much attention to the goals in the meantime. So I think I might try setting, again, goals for individual months or themes for individual months this year to see how that works for me, rather than doing what I typically do and just doing what I feel like in any given day or week of the year. We'll see how it works out at the end of the year when I give my year-end report. All right, moving on to the more language-specific goals, starting with Korean, and specifically Korean speaking. Thankfully, I have kind of begun to branch out and finally get involved in my community in Korea. I am a strong introvert, and so it's been several years a goal to get more involved and get out of the house, and finally this past year, I was able to accomplish that goal. And because of that, I'm discovering more and more opportunities to engage in conversations in Korean and speak more Korean. And specifically, I have these 3 goals for my speaking skills. Number 1, I want to engage in more long conversations in Korean, which I should be able to do, again, as I develop more friendships and become more involved in Korean clubs. And so hopefully I can kind of deepen those friendships and deepen those conversations into longer conversations as well. And kind of going hand in hand with that goal is a repeat goal from last year, which is to become more eloquent when discussing complex ideas. I still struggle with this. I will have some deep thought I want to express to somebody and I can't quite phrase it the way I want to. So hopefully this year, as I do engage in those longer conversations, I can also practice that skill of being able to discuss these complex ideas more fluidly and eloquently to my friends. And another repeat goal, I think possibly for the third or fourth year in a row, is to be able to express my personality better. Again, because I wasn't engaging in a ton of these long conversations last year, I wasn't really super improving my speaking skills this past year, and so I feel like I still struggle to kind of have my humor and my unique self kind of coming across as perfectly as I want it to in Korean. Because my speaking output still has its limits, that kind of limits the personality that I can show to my friends as well. So hopefully as all these speaking skills improve, I can also kind of reveal more of my personality in our conversations as well. Moving on to Korean writing, I believe this is also a repeat goal possibly, but I want to write more in the year 2025. As you'll see in a future video, I didn't write a super ton in the last year, and so hopefully shouldn't be too difficult to accomplish this, but more specifically, I want to kind of develop a more complex, nuanced writing style when I do write, not just fall back on the same old sentence patterns and vocab that I always tend to use. And kind of hand in hand with that, I also want to use a more advanced vocabulary when writing as well. I tend to, again, use the same structures, but also the same vocab that I'm comfortable with in my writing. And there's a ton of vocab that I know, but I can't actively use very well, both in speaking and in writing. So hopefully by practicing both those skills, speaking and writing, I can become more comfortable with a wider variety of output vocabulary as well. So maybe I will do some kind of topic writing practice to kind of write on random topics outside my comfort level, as well as possibly just writing summaries of things or picking a topic and writing about that topic. I don't know. There's a bunch of different activities I could do to practice this, but generally I want to write more and write better is the kind of simple view of that goal. Next up is Korean reading. And here I actually threw a specific goal. As you might have noticed, I tend to do more kind of visions versus like specific measurable goals just because I don't like the pressure of a specific number usually, but I am going to do it in a few places, as you will see. Starting with this one, I want to read 25 books, Korean books, in the year 2025. I saw Jordan Languages is doing a 25 and 25 reading challenge as well for herself, or she at least made a list of 25 books to read for the year 2025, and I got inspired. You know what? I'm going to push myself this year to actually read 25 books in Korean in the year 2025. I've never read anywhere even close to that number of books, Korean books, in a year, but I have proved myself in the past few months that I am definitely capable of doing it. I just don't read often enough to have accomplished that in the past. So if I push myself and actually read more often throughout the year, I know I could do this. It is definitely a feasible goal, and I will feel so proud if I manage to do this because I don't even think I've read 25 books total in Korean in the past 15 years. So definitely a stretch goal, but I know it's definitely attainable for me. So we'll see if I manage to do it. Again, I'm really excited about this goal, honestly, so hopefully I can remind myself to pick up books and read them more often throughout this year so I can accomplish this goal. More generally, back to my kind of more vague visions for the year, I want to read also outside my comfort zone, not just novels like I tend to enjoy or webtoons like I tend to enjoy, but also on a wider variety of topics. I have a really strong vocabulary and ability to understand things on the kind of topics I always tend to go to, like for example, rom-com language I am an expert at, I'm great at. But if I were to watch some lecture on, I don't know, public transportation, I feel like I'd struggle to understand the nuances of vocab there, or on global warming, or I don't know, any given random other topic outside of my typical go-to cheesy fun fluff that I tend to enjoy. And so I want to push myself to read not just what I always tend to read, but also kind of push myself outside my comfort zone and read some maybe news articles, maybe just internet articles on random topics. I have a couple of reading textbooks that I've barely touched that have a wide variety of topics as well, and they're geared towards language learners. So there's definitely things I can do that I have easily accessible to me that I just never tend to do. So I do want to do this year. I think, again, this is a repeat goal that I kind of failed at last year. So hopefully this year is the year that I finally push myself outside the comfort zone and become more familiar with a wider variety of topics, because again, a native speaker would know these things and I don't. So I need to improve in those areas because it's my goal to become as close as possible to that difficult status. And then finally for reading, I also want to do more intensive reading this year. And by that, I mean I want to have more sessions where I'm actively looking at vocabulary, possibly making a flashcard set and reviewing them afterwards as well, just to try to actually get a little more of the vocab that I'm reading into my head, rather than just kind of skipping over the same old words that I don't know every single time and never actually learning them. So hopefully this year I can read more than 25 books, but also spend more time doing focused, kind of intensive, close reading sessions, not always just extensive reading sessions. So we'll see if I'm successful there. I have a lot of big goals for reading. Hopefully I can achieve all of them. But yeah, finally is kind of the other Korean category. The first one is to take the topic exam or the topic speaking exam. 2 years ago almost, I took the topic exam, so it'll expire this fall. And then over 2 years ago, I took the topic speaking exam, only got level 4 on that one, and it's already expired, I believe. So yeah, I don't need these tests necessarily, but I think it's kind of a good thing to do occasionally. First of all, to keep them up to date, not expired, just because I like to have that on my resume as kind of a look what I can do in my own languages, but also just as a motivation factor, kind of to push me to improve the areas I need to improve, writing on the regular topic and speaking for the topic speaking. Obviously, those are my weak areas, my output areas, and so always good to kind of push myself to improve those areas. So I might hopefully take one of those tests this year, depending on what I feel like later in the year and how that works out kind of schedule wise. And then my other goal in this area is just to kind of continue to increase my exposure to Korean news. Again, going back to the same idea of all those topics that I don't usually expose myself to because I don't enjoy them necessarily, but they are good things to know as a human in society, I guess. And I want to be able to understand if people mention it in conversation and be able to have a decent, coherent thought on the topic if it gets brought up in conversation. And so I do want to continue to watch the news occasionally and do kind of vocab study from the news to, again, constantly improve my nuanced jargon and vocabulary on a variety of random topics. All right, so that is finally all of the Korean goals for the year, because that is kind of my highest priority, highest passion language. I tend to have a lot more goals for that language, but moving on to Mandarin. First of all, starting out strong with a actual specific goal, measurable goal for Mandarin, which is to finish all of the intermediate and upper intermediate stories that are available on Do Chinese. I have read nearly all the intermediate ones, not quite, so I'm very close to finishing that first half of the goal, and then I want to, again, read all the upper intermediate stories as well. Right now, intermediate is kind of easy for me, and so I imagine that upper intermediate is more of my actual level for my Mandarin reading currently, and so hopefully I can do that throughout the course of this next year. The next goal is to study grammar occasionally, which I almost never do in Mandarin. A couple months ago, I found a resource called Mandarin Bean that has a ton of free exercises available on their website, so I'm planning on hopefully occasionally from time to time going on there and doing an exercise or two just to kind of spruce up my grammar occasionally. It's not really the highest priority to me, but I do want to occasionally work on it just so I'm not like only gaining vocab knowledge and not having any knowledge of basic sentence structure. Chinese doesn't tend to have a ton of complicated grammar stuff like Korean had when I first learned it, and so I don't really need it to understand sentences usually, but I think it's, again, a good kind of building block to occasionally work on to improve my level of Chinese. And then finally is perhaps a surprising goal, and that is that I want to actually occasionally do some speaking practice in Mandarin. I know, shocking, I don't really care about speaking in Mandarin generally, but there is inspiration and a reason for this, and that is the Chinese professor at my university where I teach. I think it was a year or so, maybe even more at this point, where I had a brief conversation with her at some sort of big event for students where I just briefly realized who she was and bravely broke out of my shell to speak Mandarin to her to practice a little bit of just a few sentences of conversation, and she was surprised, of course, that some random person spoke Mandarin to her. But yeah, it was a rough time then, and I really, these days I've kind of seen her in the past few months in the elevator often. I think we had like a similar schedule, and I would always think, oh, I wish my Chinese was better so I could actually make a legit conversation with her, because again, my listening is okay, but my speaking is just, I can't form sentences because I never practice it. And so I'm thinking maybe just to practice some basic stuff so I can, if I run into her in the elevator again, actually have a very brief little conversation. Again, speaking is not the biggest priority for me in Mandarin, but just for the sake of speaking to her at school occasionally, just to make pleasantries in the elevator, I want to be able to comfortably make a few sentences about basic topics. And yeah, that is it for Mandarin. Moving on to my final language, which is Japanese, of course. And yeah, my biggest goal for Japanese is just to be more consistent. Last year, I really struggled with this. I really let it fall off at the end of the year. Beginning was okay, but the end was rough for sure with Japanese, and it's very, very hazy and foggy. I feel like I've forgotten almost all of it. Hopefully it'll come back once I start studying it again, but yeah, it is very, very rusty for sure. So hopefully being more consistent, studying a few days at least each month will be helpful to not be so rusty this time next year. And a similar but slightly more specific goal that I have is to get back in the habit of reading in Japanese specifically, not just throwing on comprehensible Japanese on YouTube and watching a video or two, but actually being able to recognize some basic kanji and stuff and not losing all the knowledge that I have there. I want to practice reading again throughout the year more consistently so I don't forget all of the reading knowledge I gain by ignoring it for several months. So that is the goal for that. Also, I have another kind of specific goal or two for Japanese. The first one being to watch at least 12 shows or movies in Japanese. I already mentioned I really struggle to find content that I enjoy in Japanese, and that kind of prevents me from feeling motivated all the time. But I do want to push myself to try and find some media to enjoy, or maybe not enjoy but still watch, just because I think it's really, really valuable to get that kind of exposure of language, real life people talking, engaging with each other, and using language that I've seen maybe in reading or in other things I encounter in Japanese studies. So I think it's really valuable. And so I'm going to try and push myself to find things roughly once a month. But again, it doesn't have to be strictly once a month, just roughly that. It can be in kind of clusters here or there if need be, but yeah, that is the goal for watching content in Japanese. And then finally, I want to have at least one Japanese focused language learning project or challenge throughout this year, maybe even more than that if possible, but at least one. Again, I found those really motivating for kind of jumpstarting your language motivation and also time spent in that language. So hopefully I can do at least one for Japanese specifically in the course of 2025. All right, so that is it for the language specific goals for this year, but there is one final category, which is life/other. The first goal here is to continue to consistently track my language learning time. I've really enjoyed doing this for the past 2 years. It's really fun to see all the graphs and data and just kind of see your language learning visually shown on some chart or graph. It's really fun for me personally, and I find it really motivating for me. I don't do time goals, as you've seen, but I do enjoy reflecting on time that I spent and kind of just seeing how much time I have spent on certain things throughout a week, month, year, etc. So I really enjoy it. I'm hoping to continue it as well. I might try Toggle this year, which is a kind of app where you can track your time on certain things just to see how it compares to my current system, which I did make a video on a while ago that you can see up here. I'll throw it in the cards for you to watch. But yeah, hoping to continue that trend of tracking my studying because it is, again, motivating and very fun for me personally to see all the stats and graphs. So that's the first one. Moving on to the other kind of languagey sort of related other goal, which is to kind of engage more with you guys who are watching this video. This past year I did a 40-hour 7-day language challenge that was kind of community based, where I was posting each day and people were sharing what they were doing and their progress and stuff. And it was really fun to kind of have accountability partners as I was doing the challenge, whereas usually I kind of do some project on my own and record it and then share it with you guys. It was really fun to kind of do it alongside you guys. So somehow, some way I want to incorporate more of this kind of feeling of community, doing things together with you guys throughout this year. I had a lot of fun with it last year, so hopefully I can do it more and more into the future. This might be through other kind of community challenges, might be through more community posts, it might be through something like Todoku, which I've realized exists a few days ago from one of Joe Renee's videos. It's apparently a website for language learners where you can kind of track your progress on like a leaderboard with your community as well, so you can kind of use each other as accountability partners, I suppose, to work towards some goal over a certain period of time. So it looks kind of fun, so I might do that as well. But again, just generally I'm looking forward to engaging more with you guys in the future because that makes it more fun for me. Then also I hopefully will be a lot more consistent here on YouTube. Last year I kind of failed at that. I had several months where I was just busy, stressed, lacking sleep, and did not post for a while. And I did not enjoy that. It also caused my language learning to suffer as well. So hopefully this upcoming year I can be a lot more consistent on YouTube because that again usually translates into more consistency in my languages as well. And also again, it is just really fun to kind of engage with you guys through these videos as well. So that's my goal for YouTube. And then finally I have a few goals that are not languagey at all, but just in case you guys are curious, I'll share them here. The first one being I want to join a more kind of advanced, I guess you can say, swing dance club in Korea when I go back in a few months. I am currently a part of a club already, but it has a little bit more limited number of classes, I guess you could say. And so I'm hoping to join another one that has a lot more opportunities for me while still, of course, attending my old one because I have a lot of friends there now already. But yeah, I'm hoping to really upgrade my swing dancing game and also make hopefully some Korean friends in the process. So we'll see how that goes. Also, another repeat goal, I want to do something tennisy in Korea. I've had this goal like since I moved to Korea. I have a tennis racket over there and I've never even picked it up and used it over there. So I want to do something tennisy this year in Korea. I'm going to do it. I promise this is the year I can feel it. Tennis is going to happen for me in Korea. I am so out of practice for tennis and I don't like that for myself. I was decent a while ago, a couple years ago, and that skill I can already tell is like slowly leaking away. It's also good to, exercise occasionally. So hopefully between swing dancing and tennis, I can have a better exercise physical health for myself this year. Also, I want to practice drawing throughout this year. I briefly did it like last winter and I barely touched it throughout the entirety of the previous year. And so hopefully this year I can be more consistent because I really want to be able to draw like not incredibly, but decently. So I want to practice that more consistently and build up that skill to a decent level. So hopefully this year is the year that I can also do a little bit more regular drawing just to upgrade that skill as well. I've wanted to have that skill for basically forever and I just never really worked on it. So this is the year again. I'm going to do it. I can feel it. And then finally, I want to, again, repeat goal, work on an academic journal article. It is kind of an evergreen goal that I have for myself to publish in something linguistics-y related. So hopefully this year I can also work on that. Last year I didn't exactly achieve this, but I did do a academic event, I guess you could say, that was also kind of a resume builder for myself. So I didn't do exactly this, but I did something else, which you'll find out in the next video maybe, my year in review video. But yeah, hopefully again, this is the year that I can actually make some progress on this linguistics article that I've been hoping to write for a few years now. So we'll see at the end of the year how much of these goals I can actually achieve. I'm feeling good about this year. Hopefully it will be a good year. Honestly, this past year, like I said, had some really unproductive periods of time for me, but also had some really good things happen as well. So kind of a mixed bag, but in terms of language learning, definitely had some real lows in the highs and lows of the year. So hopefully this upcoming year is a stronger year for my language learning, a more consistent year for my language learning. Only time will tell, I suppose. But yeah, that is it for this video. I will see you guys in the next one. And until then, annyeong.